Hello everyone, this is Professor Reimer. This video is from our World History class on Wednesday, April 28th and Thursday, April 29th. It's entitled Unit 9, DOL 6, Effects of the Russian Revolution. In this lesson, we will explain the effects of the Russian Revolution by responding to a writing prompt. As always, here we are with a preview. We are moving now into the next war in our Unit 9, World at War. And to help us with that, let's define each of these three terms in your own words. Dictator, fascist, totalitarian state. Pause the video, write these down, join me again when you're done. Okay, did you get something like this? A dictator, a ruler who has absolute power. Fascist, someone or something that glorifies the state above the individual. And totalitarian state, a government that aims to control the political, economic, social, intellectual, and cultural lives of its citizens. Many of the rulers of the states that fought in World War II were some form of a dictatorship, whether it was a simple dictator, a fascist dictator, or maybe a controller of a totalitarian state. Today, we are going to study the rise of one dictator, Joseph Stalin, who gained control of the Soviet Union in the late 1920s. So, in order to gather information for this lesson, in order to meet our objective of responding to that writing assignment, let's first check out this section of the textbook. Oh, you can't see. Let me move myself out of the way. All right, chapter 28, lesson 2, pages 3 through 6. Make notes on the economic characteristics of the Soviet Union in the 1920s. So just one theme this time. You're going to read about Stalin and Lenin and their economic characteristics. Do that. Join me back here. All right. Now that you've read about the economic characteristics of the Soviet Union, I want you to turn now to the economic characteristics of the U.S. In order to do that, view this crash course video on YouTube on the Roaring '20s. And again, make notes on the economic characteristics. And as you're doing it, think about how similar it was to what was going on in the Soviet Union's economy in the 1920s. Pause the video. Get that done. Join me back here. All right. In case you hadn't figured it out, the prompt is this. To what extent was capitalism in the United States of the 1920s similar to communism in the USSR of the 1920s? You're going to write an introductory paragraph. And remember, that is a contextualization statement and a thesis statement. Now, before you panic, deep breath. I also included in the assignment another crash course video giving you some historical context about the rise of capitalism in the 19th century and the rise of communism or socialism in the 1920s. So if you feel like these terms are really hard for you, go back and check that video out. And once you do, or if you do, join us back here. And now let's go through the steps to respond to a writing prompt. You've seen these before. Here they are again. An introductory paragraph has these characteristics. This is the overview. This is what's got to be in there. Contextualization statement is information that explains the relative historical background of the essay. How much relative historical background? Go back about 20 years. About 20 years. Also, it can describe the key terms in the prompt. And it usually answers who, what, where, and when. Remember, a thesis statement comes after the contextualization statement and is a historically defensible claim that establishes a line of reasoning. We have a formula we use in this class. X, however, A and B, therefore Y. Now, before we get into each of these individual parts, what do we do first? We got to analyze the prompt. Okay, and we look at these three questions. What's the skill that I'm being asked to write about or being asked to demonstrate in my writing? What's the topic? And what's the time period? All right, and this one, the skill is easy because it uses the words from our skills. Remember, we have three skills: causation, comparison, continuity, and change over time. Similarities, that's comparing. So the skill, comparing. What's the topic? Capitalism and communism. Time period, 1920s. Okay, so the reason we do that, because now you're going to need to go gather evidence to help you answer and respond to this prompt. And depending on the skill, the way you gather evidence will differ. So because it's a comparison, we should use a compare and contrast chart where we have Soviet Union's economy in the 1920s, in the United States economy in the 1920s, their individual characteristics go on either side, and anything they have in common goes there. So go back to your notes, go back to the videos and the textbook if you need to. Make a chart like this, fill it in. All right. Now that you've gathered information, you're able to write your thesis statement. And always, always, always start with the why statement. The why statement, remember, is your actual argument. And depending on the prompt, it's usually an either or. So in this case, capitalism was either very similar or not very similar. So look at your Venn diagram. Is there a lot of information in the center? Then you would argue it's very similar. Is there not a lot of information in the center? Is mostly the information is off on the sides? Then you would say not very similar. So make that choice right now. All right. Once you decided your argument, now you need to create your main points, or what I call your A's and your B's, also called your line of reasoning. I've said in the past you should use the themes, but sometimes, like in this case, the question focuses only on one theme. In this case, the theme of economic structures. So you're going to have to work with some sub-themes. You might look at government intervention in the economy. You might look at the role of leaders in the economy. You might look at what type of economy. You might look at who controls the factors of production in the economy, right? Those are some sub-themes in the theme of the economy. And then also in your thesis statement, there's the X. Remember, that's the counter argument, or the strongest argument against your argument. If you argued they were very similar, then counter argument would be a point arguing that they were similar. Or if you argue it's not very similar, a counter argument would be evidence for they were very similar. So pause the video again, go back to your notes, identify your A, and if you can, your B, and if you can, your X. Remember, only one point is necessary, just an A. If you can get a B, your thesis gets stronger. If you can get an X, your thesis gets even stronger. But really, you only need 1 point. Go do that now. All right. Now you got to put it all together, right? You definitely got your Y. Hopefully, you got your A, maybe even an A and a B. Maybe you have an X, depending on what you have. You can choose one of these variations. You can go with the original, which is number 1, or you can go with number 2, or you can go with number 3, which tends to be the most common variation. In fact, the example I'm going to show you uses this example, where you give your argument first because of your main points. If that's more comfortable for you, do it. All right, write your thesis. Now, if you're in my Google Meeting, share it with me, and I'll let you know how you did. All right, remember, introductory paragraph has 2 parts. We've just done the thesis statement. Now, we go back and we do the contextualization statement. Why do we do the thesis statement first? Because contextualization, as it says here, it's information that explains the relevant historical background of the essay. Like, you can't do the background to the essay unless you know what the essay is about. So you got to do the thesis first. But then you can't just present the thesis to the reader without some background information, or else the reader's not going to know, have a good understanding. So in our prompt, how are we going to do the contextualization statement? Well, it's the 1920s. So if we go back 20 years, what's going on in the 20 years prior to the 1920s? And if you're like, I don't know, what did we just study? World War I. Did World War I influence the economy of the Soviet Union in the 1920s? Yes. Did World War I influence the economy of the United States in the 1920s? Yes. So tell me about World War I and how it influenced the economies in the Soviet Union and the United States. That would be my suggestion about how to write or what to write in your contextualization statement. How long should it be? 3 or 4 sentences. Write it now. All right. Let's end with an example, because you might be thinking, like, I need to see something. Show me a student who's done this. Here you go. This is from our Unit 7 DOL 3. Same assignment. Write an introductory paragraph in response to a prompt. Remember this prompt. To what extent were the causes of the American and French revolutions similar? Another example of a comparison topic, but you are comparing the causes, but you're still comparing. Here's what the student wrote. There's a lot that can lead to a revolution. Not a bad way to start. So you kind of start broad, and we're going to get narrower and narrower. In the USA, it was Great Britain implementing taxes and legislation that hurt the colonies. Background information, yes. In France, it was the third estate having enough of the first and second estates having the power. Now, this context just barely got it. But it needed to have been a little bit more specific background about the causes. But I took it. Now here comes the thesis. The causes of the American and French revolutions were fairly similar. There's the argument. Fairly similar. As both revolutions were against monarchies abusing power, point A, and were inspired by the Enlightenment, point B. So which variation did the student use? X because A and B. And it works really well. Great thesis statement there. So use this as a model, as an example. You can do this, guys. If you continue to work at it, you will get better at writing. And remember, when you get better, you get a 100. So keep working hard. I'll see you on our Google Meet next time.